Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. With me today is Jaquilyn Edwards of Ochre and Beige. Jaquilyn helps interior designers step into high-end positioning through their words, systems, and experiences so that their value is unmistakable. On the episode today, we're going to explore how intentional messaging builds trust faster, strengthens boundaries, and ultimately grows and protects your profit. Our hope is that you can use this information to run a thriving business that reflects the true caliber of your work. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hi, Jaquilyn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michelle. I'm so excited to be here. I think it's going to be super fun.
It is going to be good. And I'm so glad to have you back again. You and I have been friends and known each other. I was trying to think about it the other day. I want to say, was it like 2014, 15? It was really
I think
early.
17.
Was it
Yeah, I think it was
17? Okay.
17. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
And
was
you had just
really,
started the podcast as well.
yes, I started
It
that
was way
right in
back. Yeah.
18.
Yep. Yep.
Really early on, and you did some beautiful copywriting for me and lead magnets and all of the things as you were starting your business and
Mm-hmm.
traveling around the world to experience life. And I remember being, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I remember just being in awe of you. You were a young woman and you were traveling alone in
Mm-hmm. Yep.
some
I did that.
really, yeah, like just like I'm just gonna go to Europe or Switzerland or wherever, and I'm gonna, travel and see things. And certainly at the time I had teenagers and married
Mm-hmm.
and
You were
a
probably so worried.
little more locked down. But I just thought, what? I mean, there's some fear involved in that. At least for me, I would have felt a little bit of fear, but excitement. And I was so just enamored by watching what you were doing and how you were doing it. It really inspired me that you were willing to pick up and follow your dreams. And it's not something that your family in general just did. Like you definitely kind of broke the mold on some of that.
Yeah, I remember at the time I had been working for a startup in San Francisco in tech, and I had been doing it for 3 years. It was a really cool experience, but I didn't love tech, and I had just felt a little lost. I was like, I don't know, what's next for me? Like, what am I passionate about? And it's like, I just need change. Like, I need something to change my life and see a new perspective. I actually had a friend who worked at the same company who was from Bulgaria, and she was like, go to Europe. She's like, the world is bigger, get out, go. And I was like, but I don't know anybody. She's like, just go, it's safe. And I was like, is it safe? Not sure. But I ended up, I had a contact in Switzerland. So I started there, and then I went to Rome, like took the train down to Rome by myself, and then took the train to Paris, and then I flew back from Paris, and I ended up moving to Switzerland later. So clearly, it made an impression.
Yeah, but just to be able to do that whole how do I look at things differently? And I bring this up and I mention it as part of the podcast because I think that also has given you a well-rounded view of looking at things differently. What are different perspectives? How are how are things perceived? I mentioned to you that I'm going to be going on a trip to Paris, and we've already been given information on how Americans are perceived in Paris and how to be careful with what we do and what we say and how loudly we speak and when we say hello and goodbye and like all of these things so that we can be perceived in the way that we want to be perceived because some of the niceties, if you will, some of the cultural norms are different. And I think that is right. And so for you to be willing to go out and expand, because let's be honest, I've never been to all these places, but I am going to hamper a guess that the cultural norms in Paris are not quite the same as they are in Switzerland.
No,
I think there
not
will be
oh,
some
and not
things
in
that
Italy
might,
either.
and
They're
not in
massively
Italy
different.
either.
Yeah,
That's
massively
right.
different. Yeah.
That's right. You watch and you see and you kind of perceive about Paris and the way that people interact. And then you watch these shows about Italy and everybody's like, "Oh, come try my sauce.
Yeah,
Come to my house."
yeah,
It's
exactly.
just
It really
so
is like
you go
that.
from a very reserved, a little bit more formality to, "Oh, we're all family. Come in and let me feed you." Like that's the perception. That's the perception that we have. And so this is important because with the conversation that we're having today, it's about our words matter. And the words that we're choosing and the phrases that we're using and the way that we're showing up online and the brands that we're building and the messaging that we're putting forth is perceived in different ways by different groups of people. And so when you are in Paris, you're trying to act more Parisian. When you're in Italy, you're trying to assimilate more with the Italians, right? And when you're in Switzerland, you're trying to be more like the Swiss. You're being very neutral on all things, right? You're just trying to figure out how,
They're even more reserved, by the way. They're even more reserved than
yeah,
the
I could
French.
see that. I could see that. They're more reserved than the French.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. I better rein in some of my Southern when I go there.
Lovely people, very
Yeah.
reserved.
But you're right. So you're trying to assimilate so that you can speak in a way that they can hear you, the way that they can take it in, and the way that they can use that information to truly communicate back. All right. Well, the same thing's happening in our marketing and in our messaging. You do copywriting and all of these beautiful things. And what we're going to talk about today is really how to speak to that luxury market so that we're not only talking to them, but we're protecting our profit with our words. We talk about on the podcast how profitability, yeah, it shows up in dollars and cents, but profitability doesn't start with dollars and cents. It's with the decisions that we're making all along the way, decisions in our messaging, decisions in our product and our service and all those things. So tell me just a little bit. You often say, that luxury is a business strategy. What do you mean by that? How do you use that and how do you see that at play?
Yeah, so and I think your analogy is so spot on with the, in France versus Italy, like the idea of connecting with the people who you want to see you and who you want to be seen by. So when I say luxury as a business strategy, what I really mean is that interior design is a luxury industry. And so whether you don't even have to put a name on yourself. You don't have to say, we're a luxury design studio. You don't have to do that. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to understand that you are not just delivering a finished product, you are delivering the whole experience that it takes to get there. And for an affluent client, they know the difference. They know that not every designer is going to be the same. Not every process is going to be buttoned up. And do you know what they want? They want buttoned up. They want to know that everything's going to be taken care of for them, especially if there's someone who maybe has a second home or they travel a lot. Whatever that happens to be. So when we think about luxury as a business strategy, it's the positioning, it's the framing, it's positioning the designer as the leader in this experience and having it feel high touch without the designer necessarily needing to do more, right? Like it's not about, in fact, it's about doing less. It's about communicating the value more so that that client is able to, one, let go once they become a client, so the designer can do what they're, experienced in, and two, to get that affluent client who actually wants that, not the micromanaging client who's really excited to be, super hands-on, which I don't most designers who come to us do not want that. So I don't want to speak for everyone, but that's what we hear.
So it's interesting. I've been having a lot of conversations, just even privately in my coaching experience, where we've been talking about really looking at other high touch luxury markets and ways that like hotels and different how they position themselves, what they say, what they do. And one of my clients was sharing with me that her client had gone somewhere and she was staying at this amazing hotel. It may have been like a Ritz or something. And she ordered like a, let's call it a Coke or a Diet Coke. Well, it was like 18 to $20 for a Diet Coke. But it came like on this beautiful silver tray and it came with like this beautiful napkin and like a little card. And by the time it was over, she so enjoyed the drink and so enjoyed the presentation of that Diet Coke that it didn't even register to her that that was an 18 to $20 can or a glass of Diet Coke, a chilled glass, beautiful ice, like a little ice bucket. The presentation of it was so amazing that the price, it wasn't about the Diet Coke, it was about the experience of having the Diet Coke. And so we've been having a lot of conversations that these affluent clients, they really are coming for the experience of being pampered, the experience of being heard, the experience of stress relief, to your point, that experience of I can let go, or the experience of you're fully communicating with me so I know what the next steps are and I know what's expected of me by when, so that things aren't, sometimes we feel like we're being kind and gracious by being so open-ended so that we can be so flexible, but that flexibility can invite confusion when we're not careful, because now we don't know, was I supposed to answer or were you supposed? It's kind of like when you say let's talk on Thursday at 5, but nobody says who's calling who or how we're going to do it, and everybody's sitting there at 5 going, am I calling you or are you calling me? And then it leads to this awkwardness, and either you're both trying to call and then you miss each other, you go to each other's voicemail, or nobody calls because, well, I'm waiting on you, you should be calling me, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
just,
And I've had some
yeah, go
I've had
ahead.
some designers say, my clients really, they don't want to hear from me. And I think that that's a dangerous place to be, because if you are not communicating because the client doesn't want you to, you are going to set yourself up for problems later. And so I would argue, one, it's about communicating the right thing at the right
That's
time
so
and
right.
doing it in a very professional manner so it doesn't feel like you're spamming them, right? They're getting this beautiful, PDF, for example, welcoming them to the experience and telling them what's coming. That is something that they know they need to sit down and look at. Or if not, let's say they don't, at least you can reference it later when, maybe there's a
Right.
problem and you're like, oh, I mentioned this in this document. Don't, not just having everything in the contract, but actually having pieces from literally inquiry to the time that they go off into the sunset, where you're documenting everything, reminding them of things before the next phase starts. I don't want to say over communication because I think it's essential communication, but I would just say that it's super important, and it can totally change how the whole project goes. All of these little potential problems that can come up, like the micromanaging clients, or who's that client who goes out and finds something cheaper? Nobody likes that person, right?
Right, right.
Or the client who asks you, what are your margins? Like you don't want these clients. You want them to trust you and buy into this experience that you're providing them, including like the value of this, extensive network that you've built of trades and partners and specialists. Like that's all stuff that has to be communicated early so that there isn't any pushback, there isn't any, problems happening later. So I just mentioned that because as you were saying that, the first thing I thought of was like, well, there are the clients who have told me like the objection is, well, they don't want to hear from me. It's like, well, they're hiring you, they have to hear from you. That's the whole point.
Well, and I think too, to that point, if we know how we need to communicate so that we can drive the project to the end result that we want, then we also can use that as a litmus test to, are you my ideal client? Like if you truly wanted somebody who was hands off, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to deal, I just want to hear, hire, go. We get to make the decision on, is that even the way we want to work? I get communication preferences. Sometimes we can work through those. But if I was working with a client who was like, I don't even want to hear from you, that's not really the relationship that I would want to build. That's a
It's
different,
tricky.
it's tricky.
Puts you
I
in a tricky
loved how
spot.
you called it to essential communication, because there is this fear sometimes that I'm over communicating or under communicating, or I've given you that information, but maybe we didn't give it at the right time so that they don't absorb it and they don't know how to use it. And but it's also important as we're creating these communication pathways, whether it is PDFs or timelines or contracts or, additional supplemental documents, whatever it is. I think it's always important to let the client know where they are within that process, because sometimes just here's the process and kind of that you are here will answer so many questions about what's coming or what's going to happen, that there doesn't even have to be, like, you've communicated in a visual, right? Or in a word picture in some way that you don't have to then overly send emails or communicate in a way that feels cumbersome or micromanaging for us.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree.
So, what are some of the words or phrases that we do? So we've talked about the need to communicate, right? We've talked about communicating in a way that they can absorb it. But I guess let me step back a minute. When we're all talking about wanting to choose that more affluent client, and when we very first start in design, it's rare that we're starting in the $10 million homes with 75,000 square feet. Like that's just not usually where most of us have our first jobs, right? We're starting and we're working our way up. And the language, I'm going to say, the words that we communicate with might be very different at the entry point into the industry than they would be when we're trying to serve, way up here in the industry. Some of the words that might come in down here are budget friendly, kid friendly, pet friendly, you know, um, dupe, done with you. It's getting your feet wet, if you will, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is a level of there is a stepping stone, and there's a level of consumer that needs that level of help. I mean, that they just do. So somebody's going to need to serve that. There is some money there to be made, and there is are lessons to be learned that are better learned that are better learned there than way up here, right? Okay. But I remember a client telling me one time that she was trying to serve like this really high end, and her tagline was something like all budgets work.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
yeah, you feel it.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I don't think that's the phrase that you want to use that's because they don't want to know that you're budget friendly and that all budgets work. That means that you respond to everybody and everything. And you need to use your words more carefully to speak to the level that you want to speak to. Talk to us a little bit about I'm just even going to call it level up let's call it luxury up. Let's not call it level up because I think you can be extremely professional and serve the middle ground or serve at the entry part in the marketplace and be wildly professional and all of that. So I don't want to make it like it's the point and you can't stay there if you choose to. But when you luxury up, meaning you're buying, that's a good phrase, isn't it? Luxury up. I like that. I'm gonna write that down. Luxury up. You're welcome to use it. So when you luxury up, you're working with a higher level of quality and value of vendor, of client, of expectation, of responsibility, of scope, of subcontractor, right? All the things that we're looking at. We've got to change the language. Tell me about that. How do we luxury up our words and phrases so that we're not dropping profit because we're saying we're budget friendly for everybody? And then the people that we really want to serve are like, well, I'm not calling you. Like, I don't want to say that my designer was the discount designer that is budget friendly.
I honestly, I don't want to say never. It's very, very rare that we ever even use the word budget. We always use the word investment. And when
Investment.
we talk about a budget, we would say allocate your investment or, create an itemized, but in that case, we might say itemized budget, but we always say investment first because
Right.
that's the focus, right? Like, and it is an investment, this is a long-term thing. We would use words like, longevity, quality crafts. Like affluent clients want things that last. And that goes back to investment, right? Like they believe in the value of design as an investment in their quality of life. They don't want things that are going to break, or they wouldn't be hiring a designer. So those are the things that we focus on. I really do think that for affluent clients, they know that part of the value of a designer is their network. Like they get to hire one person who then brings in all of these other
Mm.
specialists who make their project amazing. If they were to do it themselves, which they would never, But if they were to do it themselves, they would have to go find all of these people individually. Absolutely, they're not going to do that. This person is a master delegator. Something that another kind of reframe that we use for a higher end client is that we never ever talk about them not having the time to manage it themselves. They don't want to. And this person probably does have time because they are successful and they believe in buying back their time. So we never use that. We rarely ever say busy. We don't want to attract clients who are busy. And I say that as well because a lot of designers have told me, I don't want my clients to be involved in the process. I want them to be super busy with their own lives and they let me, do what I want to do. And I think that's very fair. But an affluent client leads a full lifestyle. They lead a lifestyle that's fulfilling, not a lifestyle that's busy, 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 structured every minute. Or maybe they do. Maybe they're, a high achieving professional and that's what they love. But I still wouldn't use the words busy lifestyle. So those are just a few that are
It's interesting because busy almost sounds frenetic.
exactly. Yeah.
It sounds
Yep.
like you're just like
Yep.
almost
Yep.
scattered and out of control, where you have a full life that doesn't leave time for, feels very different. It lands differently, right? You have a full life of these types of things. Let us support that full life versus you're busy, stay busy. We want to work around you. Even if it's true, it's just the way that we say the words to them that attracts them. One of the other words that I think um, really kind of makes me think about that level of client is words like legacy, right? So when they're talking about family heirloom, even though I know that we don't all want our grandmama's china these days, but there are some heirloom quality pieces that they're thinking about with that value and that, you know,
Or they're
sustainable.
creating them.
Yes,
They're refinishing one or they're
that's right.
reupholstering an heirloom piece or they're commissioning a new piece that they're going to pass down to the next.
Create
We
as an
include this in a
heirloom.
lot of content that we create because I think it's really the hallmark of a client who thinks this way, right? Like it's not just about this one moment in time. And also, in many cases, they're seeing their home as a place to stay long term, even if they
Right.
have multiple homes, right? Like they're designing it for the future. And so using terms like longevity and endure and
And
even like
future
materials
even.
with patina, like they care about these things, right? So yeah, I completely agree. I think that's very true. The other thing I thought of was we do this is a weird example, but I'll give it to you anyway. So when we create like a welcome guide for designers to use with their clients, one of the sections that I love to put in there is how to give feedback on the design. And what we put in there is that the best way to give feedback is to share why something doesn't resonate with you. Don't try to solve the problem, but share why. Because imagine a designer selects a sofa and the client's like, what about this in a different color? It's like, that's not actually helpful to the designer. What they need to know is why do you feel like this needs to change? Because then they can make the decision, right? And they don't have all these dominoes falling around because one thing has changed. And so just that little thing of like training them how to give feedback in a way that makes them feel like, hey, we want to know this so that we can extrapolate this across all of the other decisions we make for you. This is how we, get this early information so that we can truly be your advocate. That is a
Right.
very different framing from like, please don't ask for 1,000 options because the whole point of
We're not going to
hiring us
give
is
them
that
to
you
them.
don't get 1,000 options.
Right, right.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? Like just one little reframe.
It's so important because sometimes I know I can remember it having people at one point where I would say, if you can't tell me why something doesn't resonate, because sometimes they don't know why it doesn't resonate, right? I love asking them why or give me more information. Is it, yeah, do you, and then they can go, well, I don't really like that texture. Well, that's not a color issue, it's a texture issue. Or I have an aversion to stripes, and you put that in a stripe. Oh, well, I need to know that there's a stripe aversion because now before we get to that next room, I got striped pillows, to your point. I can extrapolate, and I'm going to look over at my design assistant, and she's going to go change out that pillow before we get to the next room, right? We're going to take care of that. But sometimes they don't know. And what's also cool is to say, show me pattern. Like they show you multiple things and you can see the pattern. And then to be able to say back to them, I'm noticing that the things that aren't resonating with you are all in a stripe. And they were like, okay, you're right. I never thought about it. I don't like stripes. So sometimes they don't know, but even opening it up for it to be more than what's just on the surface. And many of them, I would say, if they are that level of profession or professional, they've been taught to think that way. They already know how to give feedback in a way that is politically correct or kind or constructive. Um, even though it's a very emotional thing to design your home, many of them, honestly, in some ways, have emotion in a different way about their home,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I think that's,
Thinking
yeah, that's so true.
it's not
Yeah, yeah.
disposable.
It's not a
Not that
business
they
decision, right? Like it's
That's
personal.
right.
It changes the, yeah, the
Yeah.
context.
And when we only think we only have $100 to spend, we can't get it wrong. That's when we ruminate and we're just like right all over it. These people have enough money that in general, they want to get it right, but they're willing to invest in trying a couple of things to get it right. Right. Whereas the more limited our funds, we're not. Yes.
Yeah, and they have the trust that the designer's going to get it right. They don't go into this panic mode like, "Oh, I didn't like it, something's
Yeah.
wrong." And I think trust is so essential because it happens early, right? It happens before they even become a client is where it's starting.
Sometimes it happens before they ever speak to you.
Yes, yes. Even better, even better. I had this experience recently where I was talking to a designer. She was considering hiring us for a copywriting project. And I remember we spent a lot of this conversation talking about what copywriting even was. And she had come as a referral from, a business coach. She didn't really know why she needed it. And my team member and I got off the call and we're like, wow, we haven't had to do a lot of education like that in a really long time. And one, we realized it was because she didn't get the services guide that would have educated her before talking to us. But the more important thing that I realized was she had told us I'm going to be interviewing other copywriters, which is 100% understandable. Same with designers. Like people are going to be vetting multiple designers to find the right fit.
Right.
And what I realized was that second interview, that copywriter was going to have the advantage because we had already done the hard work of educating her on why it mattered, which is so funny. And to be honest, that wasn't really the ideal client for us. The ideal client for us already knows why it matters. And same with designers. Your ideal client already knows that design matters. You
That's right.
shouldn't be
You're
having to
not having to
convince
talk
them
them
of that.
into it.
Exactly. But all that to say, if you educate them a little bit early and if you create that kind of high-end perception early, you don't have to do that on the call. And it doesn't become about I'm selling myself on the call, which I think I know a lot of business owners feel that way. No one wants to feel like they're selling. It feels icky. It feels like I'm trying too hard. You want it to feel natural, just like you're connecting. And I think that when you have the right messaging in place before that call even happens, or before that in-home consultation, or before the project even starts, it changes the game on how things go, how they perceive your value, which trickles down into all of these different areas where you could potentially be leaking profit, right? Inefficiency and
Right.
micromanaging and, whether you get referrals or not afterwards, whether partners want to come back to you because the client had a good experience or not. So many little, it's like design, dominoes. They're all little dominoes and they all impact each other. So early trust changes the way all of that goes.
So from a copyright perspective, how do we build in that trust in a really in a really profound way early on so that we can protect the profit? Like, and when we're talking about protecting profit, we're talking about, to your point, how the second had the advantage that you didn't have because they've not been educated before. Let's assume they've been somewhat educated, but just from a copyright perspective, how do we do that? Where do we start the messaging? Is it all the way back on our Instagram and our social media awareness campaigns? Is it all the way there? Is it more that say what you need to say there, but this is where you really need to build trust to protect the profits? Like how do we bake it in and how far back do we need to go?
So my big answer, which hopefully this doesn't scare people, is that your brand messaging should be consistent everywhere. You should have the same message everywhere. That is just the hallmark of a high-end brand. Look at any luxury industry or any brand you admire. Their messaging is consistent. If it wasn't, they wouldn't be having the success that they do. But if you only have to pick one, if you're like, where do I start? The answer is the website because all roads lead there. If you get a referral, what's the first thing they do? They go look at your website. If someone finds you on Instagram, where do they end up? On your website. You get press, where are they going to go? Like if someone is going to do their homework and figure out if you are actually a potential hire for them, that is where they go. They're going to look at your portfolio, yes, and if that checks a box for them, then they're going to look at everything else. And that's where things really have to align because if your website copy feels like, as you had said before, it's not using the right language with, maybe around budget, or it's not positioning design as an experience, or maybe you're focusing too hard on, there's a lot of, there's a big, like, this is common in copywriting outside of a luxury industry where you focus on problems and solutions, but affluent clients don't really have big problems. Like, they're doing this because they want a luxury experience. Hermes does not focus on the problems of the consumer, right? Like
Right.
you're buying a handbag, it's a luxury experience or perfume. And so it's focusing on what is that experience going to be like for them? What are they going to get from it? What makes you stand out? That's really important to do, especially with the rise of AI. Michelle, we were talking about this earlier. A lot of websites sound the same. And while that may be fine if they're looking at a couple and you're doing okay, if they're savvy, they'll know. And so you have to find a way that, will make you stand out. And maybe that's you have a studio space, or maybe that's, you have this really unique exploration phase, or maybe you focus on wellness in a way that a lot of designers don't. It's finding that thing that's aligned with your values and the client's values. And that's what we work really hard on when it comes to messaging. In addition to just having it feel like an affluent experience when they get there, right? Like all of the pieces should be there. There's I talked about this recently with our newsletter community. That's my like favorite place to be. I'm not super active on Instagram, but I love to write. And this idea of like being recognizable versus standing out. And so there's a level of being recognizable, almost like you in France, right? Like you want to be recognizable so that they know that you are at this quality level and that you can be that person for them and that you're the right person for them. But you also want to stand out because if you don't, then they're going to go to somebody else. There has to be this thing that's different about you, that's unique about you, that feels really close to them. And yeah, I think the website is so, so important to do that. And that's how you'll really get the right people coming in.
Okay, so Jacqueline, I'm going to dial this way, way, way back for just a second. I want to get a bit more clarity when we say your messaging needs to match. Your messaging needs to be your brand messaging. In very layman's terms, describe for us what you mean by that phrase, your messaging. Because I think sometimes we think, well, I said I'm a designer here, I said I'm a designer there, I said I'm a designer here, I've said I'm a workroom here. Like, what do you mean by the messaging needs to be the same across all platforms? So maybe give an example of what it means and then an example of where they don't align and where it does align.
Yeah. So in my perspective, brand messaging is literally just the words that you use. It's not necessarily what you call yourself. That can absolutely be included, but it's it's everything. It's like what you stand for. And so when we come up with brand messaging for a client, for example, a big part of that is figuring out almost like a Venn diagram, like what are the client's values? What are the designer's values? And where's that overlap? What is really just this place of connection for them? And that becomes the heart of the message. In addition to we usually do like what are the three standout things that this designer has that are unique from other designers. And we've seen so many. We can see this quite quickly. But usually one is around aesthetic, if they have a specific aesthetic that they design in. Another is usually around service, and there's usually a third one that's more about like the why, like why the designer does what they do and how that connects to what the clients are looking for and what they do, their lifestyle. And so we think about those as threads. And so whatever, if you're sharing something on, Instagram, for example, maybe you're sharing a portfolio project, the way you share even just one photo would change if you're a designer focused on speaking to clients who, they can be affluent and still have a family, right? It's like speaking to clients who are building a multi-generational home. The way you describe that living room is very different from someone who is, working mostly with professional couples, and their big thing is a place to express yourself, right? Like figuring out what those unique things are. Same photo, completely different caption. And so we basically repeat the same motif throughout everything, whether that's on Instagram, whether it's in, the website, whether that's even in something like a services or investment guide, that sort of thing when a client signs on, or welcome guide, whatever. Having that intro letter, or even just the way you talk about the project, if being like creating a turnkey or luxury experience is part of what you want to share, it's doing those little things or saying those things in the messaging. Another example you had mentioned, the Coke example, right, where they brought out the Coke. I had a similar experience. I was at a Michelin star restaurant in Italy, and they explained every single dish as it came out. They explained the wine, they explained the year, they explained what the climate was like in that year. And it just felt so, it changed the experience, right? And so if that's something that's part of your brand messaging, if you want this to feel extremely experiential, that's the sort of thing that we weave in. And so this isn't to say that designers have to do all of these different things. Pick three. What are your three things that are really important to you and are really important to your clients? And just make those a consistent theme in all of the messaging that you use.
I love that. I always think about it this way. When somebody meets me, let's do it this way. If I were to meet you in Zoom and I pick up this part of your persona, and then I meet you in person and you're completely different, and then I meet you through a newsletter, and I'm like, this feels like three different Jaquelyns, right? No, it doesn't work. The messaging is off. But when I meet you through Zoom, and then I meet you in real life, and then I meet you through your newsletter, and I'm like, I feel like I'm getting this deeper, richer understanding of Jaquilyn, but all of the pieces and parts work together, then it's pulling me in into a deeper conversation and relationship. I don't feel conflicted about who is she, right? And I know that seems kind of silly, but it's true. And that I think sometimes with our messaging, we can act and say one thing on Instagram, and then you go over to the website and you're like, that feels like a completely different person. So like they're full of color and energy and fun on Instagram, and then you come over here and everything's so like white and gray and cream, and you're like, this feels so lifeless compared to the way that you're showing up over here. Which one is the real you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I know
And I think it's,
yeah, no, I was just going to say, and so to me, sometimes brand messaging is absolutely about the words that we use and the phrases that we use and how we describe things. Like to your point, that connection point, that overlap of the Venn diagram. But it's also about the visual, like the way we take the picture, the colors that we use. Is this really bright and fun, and then over here it's kind of staid and old and ick and like what are we doing? Like I've even seen people use like three or four different headshots all over the place at any given time, and you're like, I don't even know who's showing up and what you're doing, and it causes confusion.
yeah. And I was going to say too, I think especially I I'm not sure where to start because I want to just advise people, like, don't look at Instagram. Like, don't compare yourself, because it can be very difficult to say, well, what messaging do I choose, right? And the answer is that it comes from you. And I know that is so hard, and that is why a lot of our clients that we work with on website copy, they say to us, I didn't realize that was going to be so much work. And I was like, well, they didn't do anything, like we did all the work. So then I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I had to really think about
Yeah.
what I wanted and what I like and what I enjoy and where I want this business to go. And I think when we get into this cycle of like compare, and then, we think, oh, we're not doing this, we have to do that. And then, there's the next thing. We're like, oh, we've got to do that, and we've got to catch up. We forget that this, I mean, you started this business, right? Like all of us started our own businesses because we wanted to do it for ourselves first,
That's
right?
right.
Like I so believe that business should support our lives and not really the other way around. Like I don't want my life to fall apart just to keep my business going.
Right.
So all that to say, like this is for you. You are 100% like the full permission to say what you want and to go after what you want and what you like because there is somebody out there who wants that too. There's a client out there who's going to love you for that. This world is huge. Like, there are a lot of people out there,
I
and we
think what's
all need
interesting too
that sort
is
of thing.
I so agree to your point about feeling like we've got to keep up. There's so many trends, right? That it is constantly, this is the trending music, this is the trending phrase. If you want to get known, say this, that the whole big thing on Instagram, at one point might be 10 years ago, this boy's going to ask you out, say yes. All this kind of stuff, right? You can watch the trends happen. And I think in some ways it makes us feel like we've constantly got to change or evolve. Like whatever we do is not enough.
Oh,
And the
you always
truth,
feel
I
behind.
always feel behind.
Yeah,
And the truth
it's
of the
exhausting.
matter is the people that are doing all of that all the time, they're chasing something different.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
chasing
And
something
and
different.
and when I say get off of Instagram, I don't mean for your business. I mean, sure, post on there,
Yeah,
fabulous, but don't like scroll for hours comparing yourself to other designers because that is just a slippery slope and you will not be happy at the end of it.
absolutely, absolutely. You may play it with some of I'm going to call them just the quick Instagram trends just to kind of get that word out. No problem with that. But I'm talking about when we feel this need to constantly redesign our business and our strategies and who we are and what we're doing because of what everybody else is telling us that we should be. I know in our work here at Scarlet Thread Consulting, we do a huge amount of starting with what is your personal why? Why did you even start this? What is the business why that was created from your personal why? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be known for in the next year? What are you trying to accomplish? Now, how do we get there? How do we create this strategic plan, if you will, this idea of where you're going so that you can make sure your messaging is aligned? We talked about it on a call recently. We were talking about aligning your resources. What are the financials that are going to be required to create this thread of alignment? What is the communication that's going to be needed? What are the HR needs? What are the operational needs? And are we putting our energy towards the right things and our money towards and our words to the right thing? And it's that alignment of all of it, I think, that really speaks luxury, regardless of where you are, in the levels of consumer. It's the consistency of all of these things that you say what you do and you do what you say and you follow up and your words match the deliverables and the offerings. Again, whether you're at the highest of the high or the medium or the low, that's what's building trust. It still stands out. It stands out at every level.
Most people do not do this. Like most designers do not do this, or they don't do it well. And so, even if you're in the middle, you do this sort of thing and you create this consistency and you build this trust early, you're still going to get better clients. You're going to get more yeses. You're going to get more referrals. And yeah, I think, as I said before, you don't have to call yourself a luxury studio or be working with the top to do this sort of thing and see massive impact from it. So, 100% agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm curious for the designers that want to get started and they want to create a business that's more profitable, that is aligned with their messaging and that messaging is consistent. Where did they just restart? Is it just get started on the website, go look there? What is it that they do just to kick it off?
Yeah, so you mean on our website
Well, on
or
there.
like their
So like if
website?
they're
Their
if they're
website.
if they're listening to
Okay.
this and they're
Yeah.
thinking, I either want to go check my own, like what I have out there, or, oh my gosh, I've got to clean something up. I think you said a minute ago with your messaging, if we're going to clean it up, start at the website, then you make everything else align to the website. Okay, so then what I guess my next question, the follow up on that would be if they're listening to this and they're thinking, how do I even go check to see if I am protecting my profit in advance by being really aligned in my messaging? How do they go check that? What is it? What are some of the things they're going to look for?
Um, oh, that's difficult to say.
Is it
Mostly
word
because
usage,
I do
maybe?
it just so intuitively.
That's right. See, I know, right? Is it that's like
Yeah.
when people say to me, "What do you look for on the P&L?" And L?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can give you like high level, but I see so much so fast." Is it things like let me ask a couple of questions then. Is it things like what are the asking themselves, what are the word choices that I use? Kind of those three things that you said. Is it your aesthetic? Is it the way that you serve? The three things that kind of make you stand out. Is it then looking to see?
Honestly, I would say don't do it yourself, actually, because I think we're all too close to our businesses to see it clearly. I would say get an outside perspective.
I love that.
Ask a colleague. Honestly, you can book a, free consultation. We do like discovery calls, and I will look at your website before we get on the call, and I'll tell you what I think. I feel like it's very honestly, even with my own copy, I can look
It
at
is
my
so
own
hard,
website, and
isn't
I'm
it?
like, is it good? Is it crap? I don't know,
It's
because it's
so hard.
mine. I wrote it, and so yeah, I think an outside perspective is the best place to start. If you have a partner or colleague that you're really close with, get their thoughts on your site. Tell that or ask them, what were your impressions? The other thing you can do is, we did this recently and it was so insightful. We interviewed our three of our favorite clients and we basically asked them, like, before you reached out to us, what did you think about us? Like, what was the impression that you had? Why did you decide to contact us? And we got very interesting information about how they thought about us. And so I was able to look at the website and be like, this is what's being communicated right now. Do we like this? Great. It led to these clients. Fabulous. Or do we not like this? Is this not how we want it to be perceived? So I think getting outside feedback is the best first step because it's so hard to know on your own if you are not, qualified to do it. It's like looking at your own home, or
So
if
smart.
you're
Yeah.
not a designer, someone who's not a designer looking at their own home and they're like, well, what is wrong here? It's like they don't know.
They don't know. They don't. That is so good. That is so good. It's interesting because I always ask the question, are people picking up what you're putting down? Right? Meaning, are they getting from it what you're intending them to get? And and especially when people go, why do I keep getting these clients who fill in the blank? Well, there is something that I call it going fishing. You're using some bait that is attracting them. And so if the bait that you're throwing out there is attracting the wrong fish, we've got to look at the fish that you want, figure out the bait that they want and shift it. But I also know that when clients call me, the first place I go is their website before I even go to their Instagram. And I look at the website, and I will tell you 9 times out of 10, I can tell you who they serve. I can tell you what they do, tell you who they serve. I can tell you what level of the market they're in because their website reflects that. Mhm. When they've got like powered by Wix at the bottom, I'm very aware of that they're starting, that they're getting their foot in the door, right? They're trying to get this going, not in a judgmental way, just in a recognition of I can see where you're playing ball. Yep, I know what's happening here. I can sometimes see a problem, to your point, with words or phrases or even some of the images that they put up before I ever have a conversation with them.
Oh, that just brought up another idea. This isn't really copy related, but it's definitely positioning related, which we're heavily involved in. If you are a designer looking to design full homes, please do not segment your portfolio by room because you
Mm,
will attract people who want a room. Position it as a full home. Hopefully you've done a full home. If not, that's okay. If you've done a couple rooms in one home, piece it together, call it a remodel. Don't say kitchen design unless you want more
that's
kitchen
right.
projects, right? The other thing I was going to say was I think, yes, all roads lead to your website. Like that is it's such an essential piece and it's like your digital real estate, right? Like if it
That's
doesn't,
right.
I mean, it's communicating something. So if it's not communicating what you want, you've got a problem. But I think for someone who's maybe not sure, maybe ask yourself, what problems are you experiencing right now? Because if you are getting if you're getting inquiry calls that are not the right clients, website marketing 100%, you got to start there. If you are getting the calls, they're the right client, but you're not booking them, that process from inquiry to booking, that nurturing that you're doing, that's your problem, and you should probably start there, which again, we can help with, and hopefully some tips I shared today are also valuable. And then if you're getting clients who are maybe not the best clients, you still have to back it up to that first section because they haven't been, trained or attracted in the right way. And then lastly, I'll say if you are not getting referrals, then your client process is probably the point. If you're getting the ideal clients and they're not coming back or they're not telling your friends, something about that client experience or even how you've offboarded them and whether you ask for referrals or stay in touch with them, something about that is off. So I would look at where are the holes right now? Where is profit leaking out? Where do you feel the disconnect? And start there. I don't think, website is the answer for every single designer. I think each of us, knows our own business the best. So I'll leave everyone with that and they can make their choice.
I love that. I love that. So, Jaquilyn, where are you hanging out in your digital real estate that people can find you?
Yeah. So our newsletter is my favorite place. No surprises there because I'm a writer. I think eventually I'll get back into Instagram, but for now, newsletter is my favorite place, and people can sign up at ochreandbeige.com/newsletter if they want to join. We do a lot of fun stuff there. We'll give away resources sometimes. I'll share actually our last newsletter included copy do's and don'ts, like use these words, not these words. Budget was in there. Sometimes we'll do discounts on the templates that we offer, or we do live events. We try to do at least one a quarter where we're just educating on a certain topic and giving really useful advice. So yeah, that's my place. I love it there, and I hope people will join because it's super fun.
Awesome. Well, we will put all of that in the show notes. And thank you for your friendship over the years. Thank you
Same to you.
for the light that you bring to the industry. I really appreciate it. And I love the way that you describe and explain things. So thank you for taking the time to do that to our listeners today.
Oh, thank you. That's really touching. Words are my thing. So to hear that, that's really touching. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Jaquilyn, thank you so much for joining us today. I really love conversations about messaging and experience and word choices, and you gave us a lot to think about and consider. One of the areas that's important to build brand messaging is to have an idea where your business is going. And so over here at Scarlet Thread Consulting, what we focus on is helping business owners really set an overall strategy for your company, knowing where you're taking it so that then we can help you align those resources internally, looking at your financials, your operations, and your marketing. Just imagine you have all of that aligned, and then you work with somebody like Jaquilyn who can put words and phrases to exactly where you want to go and what you want to do so that you have this consistency all throughout your company. This overall company alignment between your strategy, your financial spend, and your messaging is really going to allow you to show up in the best possible way and be wildly profitable. You can learn more about working with us and working with me at scarletthreadconsulting.com. Choose your words to protect your profit because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.